And then the other thing we want to talk about is a movie that you discovered.
Yes. So I was recently reading a book called 1932, The Rise of Hitler and FDR by David Petruzza. I'll say really quick that David Petruzza, I really, really like him. I think he's an excellent author. He writes books about American elections primarily. The one he did about 1948 is really good. The one he did about 1920 is really good. And this 1932 book is also pretty darn good. And in that book, he talks about a movie that came out around that time called Gabriel Over the White House. And this movie's insane. Like, this movie's crazy. It's a movie about the president, and in 1932... this
Is it 31 or 32?
It actually technically came out early 1933, but it was made in 1932.
Hoover's still president.
Hoover is still president when this movie was made, and the president he's kind of an amalgamation of a couple different guys. I think he's mostly Hoover.
He's Harding. He's Hoover with some Harding and Coolidge thrown in.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be a Republican.
Yeah, he's kind of like a glad hander. He gets elected, but he doesn't do anything. He kind of just sits around and parties with his friends.
Yeah, he's friends with a bunch of fat cats, guys in top hats and stuff.
And these military officers in bizarrely complex outfits for the U.S. military. They have like epaulets and weird. It's very strange.
Maybe admirals were still dressed like that at the time. I don't know, but they look pretty ridiculous. So, but in the movie, he's supposed to be kind of corrupt. He's like, ha ha ha, won't the public be surprised when I don't keep my promises that I was elected to keep? Ha ha ha. Walter.
1930s acting is not amazing.
Well,
it's Walter Houston is
especially in this movie, it's not amazing. Yeah.
Walter Houston, John Houston's father, and Danny Houston and Angelica Houston's grandfather is the president. Judson Hammond. Judd Hammond.
Yeah, Judd Hamped in this movie. And he decides he's going to go for a little drive. He's driving around at like 95 miles an hour or something like that.
And he's running from the police.
Yeah, we kind of skimmed through that scene a little bit. So the context is kind of lost on us a little bit. But anyway, he gets into a car accident. I guess he has like a traumatic brain injury or something. And while laying in bed, he miraculously comes back to consciousness after a light enters the room. And there's like a chorus that's singing. And the strong implication is that he's been possessed by the Angel Gabriel.
Or at least the Angel Gabriel is guiding his actions.
Yeah, it's not clear how much is Hammond and how much is Gabriel and how much is the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. Also, he gets thrown in there too.
Yeah, he gets thrown in there too.
Yeah, but so now the president is now invigorated and he wants to help the nation.
He has a miraculous recovery.
Yes. By what means, though?
Oh, he is going to take control, exercise his real presidential authority. He's going to suspend Congress because there's do-nothing Congress. He's going to, it's like the bonus, a version of the bonus army, the army of something.
The army of unemployed or something.
The army of the unemployed shows up and it's the bonus army. And instead of scattering them with troops, he's going to give them, and he talks about, like, I'm going to have these federal programs where we're going to work in construction and build things and give you jobs. And a lot of stuff that he talks about are things that the Roosevelt administration either tried or did.
And even the Hoover administration did a little bit. Like, there were early kind of proto versions of the American Relief Administration and stuff like that. Like, those were started by Hoover. They were just done harder by Roosevelt later.
But yeah, so he suspends Congress. He marches in like Charles I, and he's like, you're a do-nothing Congress. Like, I'm going to suspend you. But also he talks about the disgusting racketeers, those bootleggers who are destroying the American soul. Oh, by the way, he declares martial law once he suspends the Congress, too.
To thunderous applause. Yay!
Yeah. Congress votes overwhelmingly. And by the way, a short thing, if you look at, they have a lot of the spinning kind of newspaper. It's not spinning, but it's a newspaper shows up. Mm-hmm. And if you read the side articles, oh my God.
Yeah, it's just nonsense.
But then there's also one where it's like, woman throws 2 children off 14th floor. If you're like, what? Aren't these supposed to be like kind of like generic, not very offensive stuff? But back to the thing is, so he's putting everyone back to work. He's demanding all this money, but those damn racketeers are out there. And there's a guy named Diamond.
Yeah. And also these racketeers just so happen to be from foreign countries as well.
Yes. He's Anton Brolowski.
So I guess Polish, I suppose.
I guess so. Anton Brolowski.
Yeah.
He gets 2 years in Sing Sing for killing 2 men. A year each. That's what the law says.
He served his time.
He served his time. This is a rehabilitated man, obviously. He's been through the Department of Corrections and he's been rehabilitated.
And he's corrupt. He's like paying off detectives and stuff.
Yes.
Like,
And he tries to pay off the president, basically. And the president's like, I'm going to let you go, but I'm putting an end to your people. And in fact, I'm butting in on the bootlegging business.
That's right. Yeah, the 18th Amendment has been approved, but it hasn't been ratified by the states, but I'm taking control.
So there's federal liquor stores.
Yes. We're going to sell booze to the public through the government and I guess give it back to you, the people. Yes. But the gangsters don't like that. They throw these very small bombs, which
they look like rocks, and then the whole place blows.
Yeah, there's a bunch of rubble that falls down. Also, the racketeers are after the army of unemployment as well.
They kill the head of it. But they shoot him. They do like a drive-by with Thompsons, and they actually have Thompsons. They have Thompsons. But then the guy's like, go on without me. And they go, okay. And they all start marching as this guy's dead, like in the middle of the street.
You have to carry on the fight. And they're singing John Brown's body is moldering in the grave.
Yeah. And then, so the president, he's declaring war on the racketeers, and they do a drive-by of the White House.
Insane. Crazy.
And this lady gets shot multiple times, clearly like almost cut in half by machine gun fire. And then the next scene, she's just sitting in the hospital.
She's like, oh, thank goodness I'm okay. This is like cut in half by this machine gun. And she's just walking around fine later on in the movie. It's
after being riddled with 45 caliber bullets, something that if you survive would be a life-changing. But so the president declares war on the racketeers, and that at some point these, how would you describe them? Armored cars?
Yeah, they're like they're like scout cars. They're like these tiny little armored car things, but I guess they're supposed to be tanks or whatever because they close in on the racketeers on Mr. Diamond's headquarters. And of course, Diamond is,
they're shooting at them with their Thompsons. And
yeah. It's like,
he's like, my lawyer's going to get me out of this one, boys. He like literally says something like that.
But first, fire on these federal troops for me if you don't.
The federal police are what they're called.
The federal police, because of course, martial law, And then they fire on this building, and their tiny little pop guns are causing massive explosions, like massive chunks of the building are falling apart.
And then they arrest the racketeers, and then they're like, you're going to get a trial. But remember, it's martial law, so you're getting a court-martial. So they get court-martialed. They get sentenced to death. And then there's a scene where they're all getting shot by a firing squad, but it's one person. It's like a bunch of them getting shot, but it's only one person per, So I wonder if anyone's like, do I have the fake bullet,
Gee, I wonder.
And then the president is like really angry at the European countries because then they haven't paid back their debts to America.
Yeah.
So he calls a conference, and in the background he's talking to them. There's like huge battleships going in the background, and then they have like a demonstration of bombing an old battleship. And he's like, "This is what's going to happen to you. Like, I don't want to invade you, but I may have to invade you because you have to pay the money that the American taxpayers deserve."
Yes.
So it encapsulates this very bizarre, simultaneous isolationist and highly interventionist position that I guess was relatively popular at the time.
Yeah. It's sort of like left wing in the sense that we need to nationalize all these companies and we need to
defeat the racketeers.
The great other
the death
among
penalty.
us.
We love that. That's great.
The death, yes.
And martial law. You don't need a trial. Fuck you. You don't need a trial. You're getting tried by the military.
And he talks about like farmer laborers. Those are the real heroes. These are the really important people. And like the army of construction, I think he calls it. It's like the army of unemployment. I'm going to turn you into the army of construction, and I will reintegrate private enterprise at a later date at some point.
At a date to be determined.
Yes.
I also like in the background when he's talking to the army of construction, there's all these people are shouting out a slogan, but there's one guy in the front row who clearly like forgot his lines. So he's just clearly like making sound with his mouth or saying words, but he's not saying the words that the other people are saying. And by the way, so all the European nations and Japan capitulate, and they sign the Washington Covenant, which abolishes war and peace for all time.
Yeah.
1,000 years of peace is what he says.
Yes.
Huh. Interesting.
He also presages that there will be a great war in the future, and it will destroy cities with aircraft such as these. Yeah, just like these biplanes here in the background that's blowing up this battleship over here, and invisible gases and death rays as well. There will be death rays in the future.
There will be death rays. He says this multiple times. We are not shitting you. We watched this before we recorded it. He says the words, there will be death rays in the next war multiple times.
Which is why we have to stop fighting and pay the damn money. Give us the money. It's like only our poor are important. Your Germany, Luxembourg, Belgium.
I know you're struggling too, but fuck you. Give us the money. You owe us. Because this is what's going to save America.
Right. And we're going to build the biggest, navy of aircraft carriers. Because
he says the biggest navy. He doesn't say aircraft carriers, but he says the biggest navy. I'm rescinding, I, the eternal dictator of America, am rescinding the naval treaty. We're going to build battleships now. And then he signs the Washington Covenant, and then he collapses, and then he dies. And the shade of Abraham Lincoln or the Angel Gabriel.
Something. I don't quite understand what was going on.
Is he under the influence? Is he possessed? Who knows? It's not really clear. But then he dies because his work is done and America is saved. 1,000 years of peace.
1,000 years of peace.
Huh.
Who's the president now? It makes you wonder.
Well, that's the question. Is it like a Dan Quayle kind of figure or,
Like, it's the eternal problem of the dictator is that once you have the guy who destroyed all the institutions of government and took power and is now dead, what do you do now? How do you put Humpty Dumpty back together again?
How do you put Pinocchio back together again? For every Papa Doc, there's a baby Doc.
There's a baby Doc.
But it's it's a real question. So a couple thoughts on this. First of all, it would have been funnier if after he's done the good work, he's channeled as Abraham Lincoln, then it's like, now I'm channeling Franklin Pierce. Let's go get a drink, everybody. James Buchanan's now in charge. No, it's my turn. It's Martin Van Buren's turn.
Wait, hold up.
James K. Polk. We're going to finish the job. No. It's Millard Fillmore's turn now. There's all these old, dead, mid-1800s presidents fighting to control.
Andrew Johnson. Now it's my turn.
Oh, God, I got impeached. Shit.
Oh,
no. Oh, man. Also, too, is that this is a really interesting, what a great artifact of its time, because this reflects how devastating the Depression was and how, for many people, the idea of some sort of benign authoritarian leader was something that they were okay with.
And these fascist dictators, Mussolini, 32 is, I think, the year that Hitler takes complete power at that point.
33.
So close.
But the Nazi Party is rising in Germany at this point. Italy is definitely under Mussolini.
The faith in democracy worldwide is
low.
Yeah. So, I mean, people are crying for a dictator. And, I mean, I guess it's credit to Roosevelt that as dictatorial as some of his executive orders were, that he had...
he didn't have the pop gun cars blowing up, shooting people with having martial law declared.
Yeah, and suspending Congress and all these other things. Like, he did not do that. That's kind of the gimmick of Joe Steele, is that Joe Steele, Stalin, does the Roosevelt thing, but does it harder. Does all sorts of crazy, gulags and whatnot,
Punishment battalions.
Yes, that is in there too. That book is cool. I recommend it. I recommend checking it out.
I'm waiting on Joe Steele too from Chris Evans.
Right. Yes.
That's right. Him and Harry Turtledove, just like,
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
Gary Busey and Harry Turtledove. Oh, man. But it's an artifact of its time, and it shows how desperate and how lucky we were in the United States that we didn't have some sort of, I'm not saying that Franklin Roosevelt is some unimpeachable person, but the fact is that a lot of people in America were okay with the idea of some sort of extreme, whether that be left-wing or right-wing extreme.
You got your Communist Party people, you got your German-American Bund and Silver Shirt Legion and all these kind of, wild and crazy guys. Huey Long, that's an example of like eroding.
I thought you said Huey Lewis for a second.
Huey Lewis, and also the news.
The power of love.
Yeah.
I need a new drug. Oh, Huey Lewis.
I need a new duck. Yeah.
I wonder what he's doing right now.
Well, it's hard to say.
I don't know. Probably nothing of interest. Yeah. But yes, Huey Long. Actually, Huey Long probably comes the closest to this kind of, because he's populist. He's not like, I'm taking control of the economy to run it for like the fat cats. Like, no. I'm giving the power to you, the American people.
The people, yes.
The people. Let me get rid of those damn racketeers.
Those others, those foreigners. Go back to whatever country. Go back to Poland, Mr. Diamond.
But it also is it's a good reminder of why extremes can really push democratic societies.
And this was a movie that
This
came
is a
out.
movie.
Made
I mean,
money.
this is basically advocating for this
Yeah.
because it fixes. It's a fairy tale. They all lived happily ever after. Is
Yeah.
basically the end of this.
It's
movie.
an unalloyed good at the end. It's like, man, thank goodness that the Angel Gabriel came down and possessed this man to make all this stuff happen for
Yeah.
us.
For our forever vigilance too is something good example of what's happened in El Salvador,
Yeah.
a country that because it got so out of control with crime, basically has become an authoritarian regime.
Yeah. What's that fella's name?
Naguib Balele.
I think that might.
You can use Bitcoin there now.
Yeah.
Can you use Dogecoin though? That's the most important question. I mean, they have literally created these giant prisons to put people in.
Yeah.
Like 40,000 people in a prison, and they're literally arresting anyone who they think is associated with MS-13.
Oh, you got tattoos? I got bad news for you. Prison.
Here's Naguib Bukele.
Yeah. He's an Arab gentleman.
He's
I
of
think.
Arab descent, yeah.
Yeah. It has always fascinated me. I mean, I guess the United States does it too, but the idea of persons from other countries becoming, not from other countries, but I mean of recent descent from other nationalities becoming your president. Of course, Obama was a first generation child of an immigrant, and that's the closest we've ever come. But for the most part,
some other presidents were, but they were from Europe. So Chester Arthur's father,
okay,
Woodrow Wilson's father were both born in Britain.
Martin-
Chester Arthur's father was born in Ireland. Woodrow Wilson's father was a British immigrant. There's some other ones too.
Martin Van Buren, maybe he's
He's from a Dutch family. I don't
Dutch
think
family.
His parents may have been an older family, but he spoke Dutch growing up. Old Kinderhook.
yeah, not English a first language guy.
Yeah.
English is a second language.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's a little bit of that in America, but it's not as dramatic as like Russia is ruled by a Georgian or France is ruled by a Corsican. I mean, I don't think we've ever had anything that
Britain
crazy.
is ruled by an anglicized Scot.
Oh my god.
Tony Blair.
Oh my god. He's like, thank you, Elizabeth I. I appreciate
That's
it.
right.
Yes.
That's right. Him and Cosmo Gordon Lang, anglicized Scots, the mortal enemies of David Starkey. But yeah, no, it's a good example though of what happens when if you have a societal breakdown, like, and it shows like that people will get pushed to extremes when there are extreme problems,
Yeah.
and that the center cannot hold in some cases, depending on how bad those problems are.
Yeah.
So
It's a sobering reminder.
yeah. Because this is a positive. You said unalloyed good. Like, this is portrayed as like everything else is red tape bullshit. Like, he's
Yeah.
cutting through the red tape. He's draining the swamp. He's having these guys shot.
He's killing people. I
Yeah.
think on Ellis Island because like
Yeah, Ellis Island. The Statue of Liberty's in the background as these guys are being lined up and shot by a firing squad.
Torch of Liberty standing vigilant over. The Statue of Liberty nods in ascension. Yes. I'm so happy to see this happening at my feet.
No more
basically.
racketeers. And they always call them racketeers. They're
Yeah.
racketeers.
Yeah. The wreckers. That's what they are. Wrecketeers.
God, it's crazy. Really crazy.
It's just as crazy as Mission to Moscow, which is something we should also talk about at some point.
Yes, we should at a later date. I want to watch a little bit more of that, but
It's insane. Yeah, I
I can see why the House Un-American Activities Committee was somewhat interested in that movie. This socialist paradise, the USSR, everything's great here.
This is
Stalin's done a great job. All sabotage, that was left deviationists.
Oh my God, Tukhachevsky, that damn Tukhachevsky.
That was the problem with Kamenev, is he was just too conservative.
It's just too, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the left, right, center. But very interesting film.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yes.
This has been a marathon of recording. I like it. Well, this is Matt signing off.
And this is Max signing off.
Have a good day, guys.
The next war will depopulate the earth. Invisible poison gases, inconceivably devastating explosives, annihilating death rays will sweep to utter destruction not only the men, but the children who would constitute another generation and the mothers who bear them.